Hello everybody, kia ora koutou. Welcome to this video about the new moon in Gemini from the point of view of New Zealand or Aotearoa or the Southern Hemisphere. My name is Fiona of Sun and Moon Calendar.nz, and first of all I'm going to turn over the calendar so we can see where we're at in the year. Right now, as I'm recording this, we are in the month of Taurus, and I'm recording this just before the last quarter moon, so the moon will be appearing as a half circle in the sky. That's a time to get a lot of things done and to reap some of the rewards of what we've worked on over the lunar month. And then our energy is going to come down over that last quarter of the lunar month, and we're going to have new moon on the 18th of June, and then our energy will be rising again as it's the new lunar month, except that just after the new moon, a few days, we have winter solstice, the turn of the year where the sun will have reached its furthest point away from the Southern Hemisphere. It'll be at the Tropic of Cancer, and that is where we have midwinter. Later in the month, in the last quarter, in the tangaroa phase, we'll be celebrating Matariki over that week, and with Puanga Raijo, I believe that the celebrations might be actually this weekend as I'm recording this video a bit earlier. So Puanga has been visible in the sky in the mornings, though it depends where you are in the country. So this is a season to acknowledge the turn of the year, to have some quiet moments amongst the celebrations, some solemn moments perhaps. We have within the Matariki cluster, the Pleiades cluster, we have the star Pohutukawa, which is about saying goodbye and letting go of things that have gone, people we need to say goodbye to who have passed. And we also have the star Hiwa-Iterangi, the wishing star, where we can be starting to think about what do we want for the future. The other stars in the Matariki constellation remind us of the fundamentals of life, the food that we have from the land, the skies, fresh water, seawater. I think they remind us to be kaitiaki of the earth, to look after Papatuanuku, the earth mother. All things for us to reflect upon as we go through this winter solstice season, the turn of the year. The sun's just come up over the hill as I'm recording this morning, so the sun's shining in now. Let's look at what is going on with the new moon in Gemini that's coming up just before the solstice. The new moon in Gemini this year will take place on Sunday afternoon, 18th of June at around about 4:30 New Zealand time. The definition of a new moon is when the sun and moon come together. We can't see the moon at that time because it's outshone by the sun, and so we call it the dark of the moon. At the time of the new moon, the sun and the moon will be descending in the sky, coming towards sunset, because sunset's very early at this time of year, just before midwinter. So as you know, I like to show a sky map, and that's to remind us to get out into the environment and see the stars and the planets, and we can think about the symbolism of them for our lives and just their vast beauty as well. Here are some of the stars towards the northwest as we might see them on the night of the new moon, but they will also be similar in the weeks around that. I'm hoping that we can get some good views of Venus and Mars. They're currently very close to each other, and they will be for quite a few weeks. Not an exact conjunction, but about 5 degrees apart. Normally, Venus will overtake Mars quite quickly and move on because Mars is slower, but at the moment, Venus is slowing down because Venus is coming up to a retrograde period starting at the end of July. So I hope you get a good view of them on a clear night, maybe on the night of the new moon. You can see that the sun and the moon are down there below the earth. I've put them there to represent the fact that they'll be on the other side of the earth from the point of view of New Zealand at that time. Two of the brightest stars that you're likely to notice if you look towards the northwest are Spica or Speaker, and that is in the constellation of Virgo, quite high in the sky at that time. And Tokerua, the winter star, is Sirius. That is the brightest star that we have. Anything brighter is likely to be Venus or maybe Jupiter, i.e. a planet. Okay, winter solstice, what is that about? On that map, which I have downloaded from Wikimedia Commons, that great red line is marking the Tropic of Cancer, which is on the other side of the equator from New Zealand, from us in the Southern Hemisphere. It's at 23 degrees 0.4 to the north of latitude, and that is as far as the sun gets on the ecliptic. At that point, when the sun reaches that point on the Tropic of Cancer, it'll slow down and slowly turn back, coming towards the south, and at spring equinox in September it will reach the point of the equator. That is our winter solstice moment on the 22nd of June, a quiet time because the sun is as far away as it can get, and for the Southern Hemisphere it's our turning point, and then the sun comes back to us and we start our solar year. So this is how the new moon in Gemini appears on the zodiac wheel using tropical Western astrology at 26 degrees and 43 minutes of Gemini, so quite late in the sign of Gemini on Sunday the 18th of June. Let's look at the energy of Gemini. The ruling planet of Gemini is Mercury with its quicksilver thinking. Mercury is about communication, neighborhood connections, community, small talk, making people laugh, banter. It's light, it's airy, it's kind of free, it doesn't get tied down. It's about also making connections in the brain, and Mercury helps us learn. It's our thinking processes and decision making. The element of Gemini is air, light and breezy, moving this way, moving that way, like the clouds there piling up, swirling around. So with air, any of the air signs are chatty and intellectual, witty and neighborly and quite logical and rational, and Gemini is all of that. And the modality of Gemini is mutable, so it's restless air. It moves this way and that way. There's a curiosity with Gemini. There's quick thinking, jumping this way and that. They like light conversation, not getting all heavy and deep. Just keep it light and not getting too attached. So lots of exploring and learning Gemini loves. So as you can see, I've chosen to represent Gemini, this image of a small New Zealand town that happens to be Kōterana in the South Canterbury. I chose it because Gemini is about neighborhoods, and I think when you get a small town like this, people are more connected because it could be far away from the city and you have to talk to your neighbors, and that's all about Gemini. Even the communication lines going there, I know it's electricity, it might not be the phone lines, but Gemini is also about our messaging on social media. It's those connections and networking, whether that's chatting over the back fence to your neighbor or sending messages to your friend down the road. The air in that picture is also to do with Gemini, with that restless energy. Small town New Zealand, that's our Gemini energy. Everyone has Gemini somewhere in their charts, and wherever this is, you're likely to have a light energy, to enjoy exploring, be curious and enjoy light banter with it, and some comedy with that, perhaps some wit. It's also called sometimes the sign of short courses and short distance travel, so short journeys, like a little drive around the neighborhood or going down to the local school after hours where there's a pottery class running or a computer class running. Those kind of local level learning, small skills, and often skills with the hands. So go Gemini. Gemini helps us to keep things light and a little bit free and entertaining and fun, even when the topics surrounding us are heavy and a little bit depressing. Gemini can help lift us up with just that light-hearted cheer. Over the few days of the new moon, take some moments to pause and rest and contemplate and listen to the quiet voice of your heart, however your heart wants to talk to you. Normally after the new moon, once we see the crescent moon, we'd start getting into things and taking action. However, a few days after the new moon, we have the winter solstice. So you might want to make your quiet time a bit longer before you get started on new things. And then over the next month, of course, we've got the Matariki celebrations. But you can start some smaller things once the new moon comes in the sky, because we always have cycles within cycles. Let's look at some of the other energies going on with this new moon as well as the winter solstice. I'm going to talk about the Sun and Moon square Neptune at the time of the new moon, Saturn turning retrograde, and Mars and Venus in Leo. At the time of the new moon, the Sun and Moon will be in a fairly tight square with Neptune. Neptune is a fairly magic planet, but it has its downside, and a square can bring tension. However, that tension and discomfort can drive us to action that can be very motivating and important. Looking at Neptune, the positive side of Neptune is its compassion, its empathy, unconditional acceptance, all-encompassing love. We are all one and we are all connected, and with that comes great imagination, ability to visualize things and to think far beyond the boundaries of our earthly existence. Neptune is very vast. The downside of Neptune is that we can get too far removed from reality. We get into escapism to an unhealthy level, and addiction can come with that, whether it's addiction to substances or to work or whatever it is, TV, Netflix, something like that. So there's a boundary issues with Neptune. We can love too much and we want to forgive everything, when actually we need to set some boundaries and remember that we're living in 3D reality. So take care of that with the new moon. Just notice if you're feeling confused and a bit lost, it could be a really good time to visualize what you want for the future, to make use of that imaginative quality, but also just be aware that the confusion might mean you're losing a bit of touch with reality, so try and get real, but it will pass, of course, after the energy of this month. Saturn is turning retrograde on the day of the new moon, and with Saturn retrograde we now have two planets in retrograde, because Pluto is also in retrograde, and at the time of the new moon Pluto will have just moved back into Capricorn, and that's bringing up some Saturn themes because Saturn rules Capricorn. So let's look at that. Saturn and Capricorn are about boundaries, taking responsibility, structures, and building slowly for the future. When Saturn is retrograde and Pluto in Capricorn, we are having more of an internal process with this. So things are happening perhaps in the background or inside ourselves where we may be rethinking about our boundaries. Over the first part of the year, for the first few months, all the planets were going forward and we had a lot of forward momentum, progress made, steps taken. Now, one by one, the outer planets will be moving into retrograde motion, and they go into retrograde for a few months at a time, so it's quite a long time. We will have some internal stuff going on where we are within ourselves reviewing that progress that we made, and perhaps thinking of how we want to adjust our course or take some steps to adjust things so that they run more smoothly or they're more aligned with where we want to go. So it's a review time. We're more internal and things will be getting tweaked and rejigged as we go. And now let's look at Venus and Mars, both in the sign of Leo, as I showed you on the night sky map at the beginning of the video. So Mars and Venus, they are the classic lovers, so supposedly men from Mars, women from Venus, but we all have both within us. Mars has the fiery passion, energy, wanting to take action and move forward, and Venus is peacemaking, wants harmony in relationship and that one-to-one connection. Venus will be a pleaser, and Venus is about beauty and love. So mostly these two get on so well because they are the classic lovers, but also there can be tension because Mars will push forward too hard and Venus will be wanting to make the peace and maybe giving up on some of herself to make the peace, however it happens. So there can be some tension there, but just notice if you're noticing those themes coming up in your life of the Venus and Mars energy mixing in together, perhaps some extra passion, perhaps some conflict. Let's see how it goes. And from the end of July to the 4th of September, we're going to have Venus in retrograde. I will talk about that more at the time, but from the 20th of June, so just between the new moon and the winter solstice, Venus is going into the pre-shadow phase. So it is going into the area that it will be retrograding back over later. It could be a good idea to take note of things that happen, especially along Venus themes in that pre-shadow period, because those might be areas that will be going over once the retrograde is in action. So thinking of Venus themes, love, beauty, our sense of self-worth, the material things that we value, and sensual pleasures and luxuries in life. Things to think about this new moon. So here are some meditation prompts or journal prompts, things to consider. With the Gemini new moon, who do you want to connect with, especially in your neighborhood? And also, Gemini is about our siblings, our brothers and sisters, our teachers, our fellow students. Who do you want to connect with and how? And with the Gemini new moon, thinking about how you want to communicate, and perhaps there are areas in your life where you want to move some of the heavy energy or slow energy and bring in that light and quick Gemini banter, small talk, and wit. Personally, I can get a little bit fed up with small talk, but there is a place for small talk in the world. It can help us make connections when it's not possible to talk about heavy topics or political topics. The small talk keeps us connecting with each other. And with the Gemini new moon and the learning ability that Gemini brings us, is there a course that you want to sign up to? Do you want to learn carpentry down at the local polytech, guitar lessons, something like that, nearby in your neighborhood where you're going to connect with others and learn from the skills of our neighbors and people around us? And because Gemini is about talk and about thinking processes, it's also about the self-talk that goes on in our heads. And this is an area where we do need to be quite firm with ourselves, because it's so easy. We're just hardwired to go to negative stuff, and then it can turn into unnecessary negative ruts where we're thinking the same negative thought over and over again. So you all know that. We all do it. It's a good time to review our self-talk and to catch ourselves out when we're going into that negative spiral with our thinking. Turn it to the positive. Take the chance of that Gemini new moon energy to review that talk that's going on in our head. And finally, with the energy of the new moon square to Neptune. A square is an aspect of tension, but it is still a connection, and it can drive us to action. I suggest that the action we take with this square to Neptune is to spend some time visualizing what it would be like if some of our big dreams, our way out dreams, our boundless dreams became true. What would that look like in our lives? The energy of the new moon gives power to those dreams if we can put some time into visualizing what it would be like for our dreams to come true. Even if they're crazy, even if you think they never could, just give it a go, because it's fun to do it anyway, and you never know what it could bring in the future. There we go, everyone. That is my video about the new moon in Gemini from the point of view of Aotearoa, New Zealand. I wish you all the best neighbourly connection and fun, positive connection with your brothers and sisters as we go into this Gemini energy, and then winter solstice, that magic time where we are turning in our year. Hei kona rā, ka kite anō.